Hi. So I've had a request to watch me do some casting. I made these molds, and I'll do a demonstration of making molds another time. But I'm working on my movie, Pip and Squeak Go Viral, which is the working title. We may have to change that. Anyway, there's a character named Mr.Hammerpuss in the piece, and got a face like a hammer. And this is a three-part mold that I've made. The two parts are for either side of the face, and then there's a top piece that sort of acts as a crown or a cap that the other pieces nest in. And so it's got little key marks and little keys on the mold, and it all nests in like this. So it locks in place. So it's a really nice mold, real simple. It's complicated to put one of these molds together. But again, I'll talk about that another time. I just want to demonstrate some of my little tricks of the trade. So basically, I'm going to cast this in neoprene, and the material I work with a lot is creature cast rubber. Although it's not rubber, it's neoprene, which is sort of a rubber substitute that they came up with during World War II. This is a company that's out of I believe Oregon, and you can go online and get a creature cast rubber. This is the rigid material. It comes in rigid and flexible, and this is black. And I like working with the black neoprene because it has a nice dull quality to it. It doesn't shine, and it's easier for me to see that it's dry. It also takes gesso real well. And so what I have right now is I have the mold, a pie pan to keep it in case the neoprene leaks out, and then to keep the seams sealed so that the neoprene doesn't squish out and go everywhere, because this stuff is super expensive. It's like $70 a gallon. So to save myself trouble, I use a low temp hot glue gun, which I've plugged in over here. And this is kind of sneaky, but a low temp hot glue gun will in fact effectively caulk and seal a mold. And since the glue gun material does not really stick permanently to the plaster, the dental stone that I've made the mold out of, you can peel it off later. So I put a really big thick line of hot glue onto the mold, seal up the sides and all the way up to the top. So I start with the sides, and I start with a very clean, dry mold. This mold just I finished casting it yesterday, and it's been washed and scrubbed so that there's no oils or mold making materials on it. And I am confident that it's absorbent enough. The plaster is dry enough that it'll absorb a lot of the liquid from the neoprene, because that's how neoprene works. You pour it into the mold, and the water from it leaches into the plaster, and also it evaporates. And what ends up happening is you have a skin that builds up against the mold, and if you leave it in the mold long enough, the skin becomes pretty thick, and then you can pour it off, and it will leave the skin, and then the skin will dry, but as it dries, it shrinks and hardens. And because the hot glue isn't super strong, I'm going to use some cheapo masking tape, and just it's so cheap that it falls apart while you're trying to use it. Just to give it some strength when I pick this thing up, because I'm going to have to swirl the material around inside the mold to keep it from having air bubbles. There's places in there that have undercuts that air can get trapped in. And if I was really worried about that, I could also have pre-painted the neoprene into the mold before I close the mold up. But I'm fairly confident that it's going to work just fine without having to pre-brush it in there. If I get a casting and it has a lot of bubbles in it or pockets where it didn't work out, I will go back and recast it with doing some brush work. But in the meantime, I'm just getting this all sealed up so that it doesn't fall apart when I swirl it around. Okay, so this is the sealed mold, and I've already swirled the neoprene around to make sure it's all properly mixed. You try not to shake it up and down because it puts too much air into it. I just swirl it, and you can see that the container that I use is covered with black neoprene. So when I get a new container of neoprene, I work the new container goes into the mold, and then as I get done with the casting, I pour it off into this ugly old container. So this is basically some neoprene that's been through a couple of mold processes. So I'm just pouring the neoprene into the mold, and because this particular one has a lot of undercuts, I'm going to swirl. Oh, and see, and I already have a leak. This is where it gets tricky. I get to the halfway point, and I really got to swirl this around to get all the air out of the mold, because there's some undercuts in there. So you have to kind of tip it almost as if you're going to spill it on yourself, but you try not to do that. Coincidentally, I have on occasion dumped a bunch of neoprene on myself. I use the pie pan in case I drip, which I just did. And then filling up the mold again. Sometimes banging on the table underneath to get some of the bubbles out. And then just basically I pour it into the top of the mold, and it's just going to sit there. Now, it's going to take about 2 hours for this size mold, maybe 3 at the most, to leave a good sized skin on the inside of this thing. But because of this thing's having so many undercuts in it, I'm going to drain this off in about an hour and then re-pour it and try to make sure that I don't have any empty blank spaces in there. So I'll turn the mold over and roll it around again to try and get some more neoprene into the high spaces where the air pockets might end up. And then I'll keep it in there for about 3 hours, and then we'll pour it off, and then I should be able to open this mold and show you the casting sometime. Okay, so it's time to demold this head. I have poured off the liquid, and now I am going to open the mold up, and it's had several hours to dry, so it should be easy to pop open. And I'm going to start with the bottom here, pry it up, and there's it's coming out of the mold here. There you go. There's the top of the head, and then there's some flash that will have to be trimmed, but there you go. So for your three-piece mold, we have the character Mr.Hammerpuss, and I have to trim all this flash and sand down where the mold lines are, but that's the finished piece. And that's how I cast in neoprene. Thanks. Okay.